You know that feeling when you're around someone who always makes you feel small and you just can't seem to stand up for yourself? It's like a heavy weight on your chest, a silent scream that never gets heard. You walk away feeling empty, wondering why you let it happen again and again. This isn't just about bad days or difficult people. It's about something deeper, something rooted in the hidden parts of who you are. In this video, we'll uncover why you struggle to respect yourself in the face of toxicity and how those old, unseen wounds from your past are pulling the strings. Stay with me and let's explore the truth behind your reactions so you can start to see yourself in a new light. Think about the last time you were with someone who constantly criticized you or made you feel inadequate. Maybe it was a friend who always had a sharp comment, or a family member who never missed a chance to point out your flaws. You felt that familiar knot in your stomach, the urge to shrink away and avoid conflict. But why? Why do we allow others to dictate our worth, to chip away at the respect we should have for ourselves? It's not because you're weak or incapable. No, it's often because of patterns learned long ago, in moments you might not even remember clearly. As Freud suggested, our unconscious mind holds on to early experiences that shape how we see ourselves and others. If, as a child, you were often made to feel that your needs didn't matter, or that expressing yourself led to punishment or rejection, you might have internalized a belief that you don't deserve respect. That belief becomes a silent guide, making you hesitate to set boundaries or speak up when faced with toxic behavior. You repeat the same emotional responses because, deep down, it feels safer than risking disapproval or abandonment. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding the mechanics of your own heart. When you're in those situations, your mind might be replaying old scripts where standing up for yourself meant losing love or facing anger. So you stay quiet, you accommodate, you put their needs above your own, all in an attempt to keep the peace. But the cost is high. You lose pieces of yourself each time, feeling more distant from who you truly are. This hook isn't just to grab your attention, it's a promise that by the end of this, you'll see how those hidden forces have been influencing your actions, and you'll start to feel a shift toward reclaiming your self-respect. Let's dive into this together and uncover the layers that keep you stuck in these cycles. Now, let's look at how this plays out in everyday life. You might find yourself in situations where someone close to you, a partner, a friend, or even a coworker, consistently dismisses your feelings or belittles your achievements. For instance, imagine Lisa, who always feels anxious before meeting her friend Sandra because Sandra has a way of making casual comments that leave Lisa doubting herself. Or think of Robert, who avoids speaking up in team meetings because his boss, Donald, often interrupts him and makes him feel incompetent. These aren't just minor annoyances, they're moments that chip away at your self-respect, leaving you feeling powerless and small. You start to notice patterns. You over-apologize for things that aren't your fault. You hesitate to share your opinions, or you go out of your way to please others, even when it costs you your own peace. This isn't about occasional conflicts, it's a steady erosion of your inner worth. Many people experience this, and it often stems from a deep-seated fear of rejection or conflict. You might feel a constant tension in your body, a tightness in your chest, or a knot in your stomach when you're around these toxic individuals. It's as if your body is remembering past hurts, even if your mind has pushed them aside. Freud's ideas remind us that our unconscious holds on to these emotional memories, influencing how we react in the present. You're not alone in this. Countless others struggle with setting boundaries because, from a young age, they learned that asserting themselves led to negative consequences. This diagnosis isn't about labeling people as toxic to blame them, but to understand why you feel so drained and disrespected in their presence. It's about recognizing that your reactions are protective mechanisms developed over time to avoid pain. But the irony is, by not standing up for yourself, you're allowing that pain to continue. You might think, if I just try harder, they'll change, or it's not that big of a deal. but deep down, you know it's taking a toll on your mental and emotional health. This is where the real work begins. Acknowledging that these feelings are valid and that they point to a deeper need for self-respect. By seeing these patterns clearly, you can start to untangle the web of emotions that keep you stuck and move toward a place where you no longer let others define your worth. Consider how this shows up in subtle ways. Maybe you find yourself agreeing with opinions you don't believe in, just to avoid an argument. Or perhaps you sacrifice your own time and energy to help someone who never reciprocates, leaving you feeling used and unappreciated. These behaviors aren't random. They're signs that your unconscious is trying to protect you from old wounds, like the fear of being abandoned or criticized. For example, if as a child you had a parent like Edward who was quick to anger when you expressed disagreement, you might have learned to stay silent to maintain harmony. Now, as an adult, that same silence emerges when faced with toxic people, because your mind associates speaking up with danger. This isn't a conscious choice, it's an automatic response driven by buried memories. The more you ignore these signals, the more they intensify, leading to feelings of resentment, anxiety, or even depression over time. It's a cycle where you give away pieces of yourself, hoping for acceptance, but end up feeling emptier each time. Understanding this context is crucial because it shifts the focus from blaming yourself to seeing the historical roots of your behavior. Freud often spoke about how our early relationships set the stage for later interactions, and by exploring that, we can start to break free. So, as we delve deeper, remember that this isn't about quick fixes. It's about compassionate self-awareness that allows you to reclaim the respect you deserve, one step at a time. To truly understand why you struggle to respect yourself around toxic people, we need to go back to where it all began, often in the quiet, unspoken moments of your childhood. Think about a young boy like Nicholas, who grew up with a father like Harold, a man who rarely showed affection and often criticized him for small mistakes. Nicholas learned early on that expressing his true feelings led to disapproval or silence, so he started to hide his emotions, believing that to be loved, he had to be perfect and quiet. Or consider a girl like Olivia, whose mother, Mary, was overwhelmed and distant, making Olivia feel that her needs were a burden. She internalized the idea that she wasn't worthy of attention, and as she grew, this belief shaped how she interacted with others, always putting them first to avoid feeling like a nuisance. These early experiences aren't just memories, they're imprints on your unconscious mind, as Freud described, guiding your actions without you even realizing it. When you were a child, your brain was forming connections based on your environment, and if that environment was filled with criticism, neglect, or inconsistent care, you might have developed a deep-seated fear that you are fundamentally flawed or unlovable. This isn't about pointing fingers at your parents or caregivers. They were likely doing their best with their own unresolved pains, but about recognizing how those formative years planted seeds that grow into patterns of self-doubt and people-pleasing. For instance, if you had a caregiver like Francis, who was often anxious and unpredictable, you might have learned to monitor others' moods constantly, sacrificing your own needs to keep them calm. Now, as an adult, when you encounter someone toxic, your unconscious kicks in, replaying those old survival strategies. You stay small, you avoid conflict, you seek approval, all because on some level, you're still that child trying to earn love and safety. This root cause isn't always dramatic. It can be subtle, like the way a teacher like Ronald made you feel stupid for asking questions, or how a sibling like Joshua always got more praise, leaving you with a sense of inadequacy. These moments build up over time, creating a narrative in your mind that you don't deserve respect, and that narrative becomes a filter through which you see all your interactions. Freud's insights into the unconscious help us see that these early attachments and traumas don't just disappear. They live on in your behaviors, especially in how you handle relationships. You might find yourself drawn to people who mirror those childhood dynamics because it feels familiar, even if it's painful. It's a way your mind tries to resolve old conflicts, but without awareness, it just leads to more suffering. By uncovering these roots, you start to see that your struggle with self-respect isn't a personal failure. It's a logical outcome of your history. Freud's insights into the unconscious help us see that these early attachments and traumas don't just disappear. They live on in your behaviors, especially in how you handle relationships. You might find yourself drawn to people who mirror those childhood dynamics because it feels familiar, even if it's painful. It's a way your mind tries to resolve old conflicts, but without awareness, it just leads to more suffering. By uncovering these roots, you start to see that your struggle with self-respect isn't a personal failure, it's a logical outcome of your history. This understanding can be liberating, as it allows you to separate who you are now from the messages you received long ago, and begin the process of healing those hidden wounds. Let's explore this further with another example. Imagine a child named Evelyn who had a grandparent like Walter, who was kind but often absent, leaving her with a sense of abandonment whenever he left. She grew up feeling that people she loved would eventually leave her, so in her adult life, she tolerates toxic behavior from friends like Angela, fearing that if she speaks up, they'll abandon her too. Or think of a boy named Tyler, whose parents, like Paul and Donna, were always arguing, and he felt he had to be the peacemaker. He learned that his role was to soothe others, even at his own expense. And now he struggles to assert himself in toxic situations because it triggers that old responsibility to keep everyone happy. These stories aren't unique. They reflect how childhood experiences shape our unconscious beliefs about worth and safety. Freud emphasized that our earliest relationships form a blueprint for future interactions. And if that blueprint includes messages that you're not good enough, you'll carry that into adulthood, often without knowing why. It's not that you're choosing to feel this way. It's that your mind is wired to protect you based on past threats. When you're around toxic people, your unconscious might be reacting to echoes of those early fears. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being enough. This is why it feels so automatic and hard to change. You're fighting against deeply ingrained patterns that once helped you survive. But by bringing this into the light, you can start to question those old beliefs and see that you have the power to rewrite your story, not from a place of blame, but from one of compassionate understanding. When you keep pushing down your true feelings and needs to avoid conflict with toxic people, it doesn't just stay hidden. It builds up until it starts to break you from the inside. You might notice that after interactions where you felt disrespected, you're left with a lingering sense of exhaustion, irritability, or even physical symptoms like headaches or trouble sleeping. This is your mind and body's way of saying that the repression is taking a heavy toll. For example, think of someone like Jennifer, who always smiles and agrees with her critical friend Carol, but later finds herself snapping at her family over small things. Or consider Richard, who bottles up his anger at work when his colleague Brian belittles him, only to feel bursts of rage in traffic or at home. These aren't random outbursts, they're the overflow of emotions you've been suppressing to keep the peace. Freud's ideas help us see that when we deny our true feelings, they don't vanish. They get stored in the unconscious and resurface in distorted ways, like anxiety, depression, or even self-sabotaging behaviors. You might start avoiding social situations altogether, fearing that you'll have to face more toxicity. Or you might overcompensate by becoming overly controlling in other areas of your life, trying to regain a sense of power you've lost. This emotional collapse isn't a sign of weakness. It's a natural consequence of living out of alignment with your own worth. The repetition of these patterns, saying yes when you mean no, staying silent when you want to speak up, creates a cycle where you feel more and more disconnected from yourself. Over time, this can lead to a deep sense of emptiness or numbness, as if you're just going through the motions without any real joy or purpose. You might find yourself questioning your decisions more, feeling guilty for wanting to set boundaries, or even blaming yourself for the toxic dynamics, thinking, if I were better, this wouldn't happen. But this self-blame only deepens the wound, reinforcing the old beliefs from childhood that you don't deserve respect. The more you ignore these internal signals, the more your mental and emotional health suffers, potentially leading to chronic stress or burnout. It's like carrying a heavy load that gets heavier with each interaction, until one day you realize you can't bear it anymore. This collapse is a crucial turning point because it forces you to see that the strategies you've been using to protect yourself are actually causing more harm. By recognizing this breakdown, you can start to acknowledge the pain instead of running from it. And that's the first step toward healing and reclaiming your self-respect. Let's look at another scenario. Imagine Angela, who grew up with a mother like Martha, who was often critical and dismissive. As an adult, Angela finds herself in a relationship with someone similar, and she constantly minimizes her own needs to avoid arguments. Over months or years, she starts feeling chronically tired, loses interest in hobbies she once loved, and even experiences panic attacks before social events. She doesn't connect these symptoms to her repressed emotions until she hits a breaking point, perhaps a day when she can't get out of bed, overwhelmed by sadness she can't explain. Or think of Jason, who as a child had to care for an ailing grandparent like Frank, learning to put others first always. Now, in his job, he never asserts himself with demanding clients, and the stress manifests as digestive issues and constant worry. He might turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like overworking or isolating himself, which only worsen the isolation. These examples show how the emotional collapse isn't just about feeling bad. It's a systemic breakdown where your body, mind, and spirit are crying out for change. Freud pointed out that repressed emotions don't disappear, they find indirect outlets, often in ways that disrupt your life. You might notice you're more prone to illnesses, have difficulty concentrating, or feel a general sense of dread without a clear cause. This isn't coincidence, it's the price of silencing your inner voice. The cycle of repetition means you keep ending up in similar situations with different people because your unconscious is seeking to resolve those old conflicts, but without awareness, it just recreates the pain. Each time you give in to toxicity, you reinforce the message that your feelings don't matter, and that erodes your self-trust. Eventually, you might feel like you're watching your life from the outside, disconnected and unsure of who you are anymore. But this collapse, as painful as it is, holds a key. It's a signal that something has to change. It's your psyche's way of forcing you to confront what you've been avoiding. When you hit this low point, it's not a failure. It's an invitation to stop and listen to what your heart has been trying to tell you all along. By facing this emotional turmoil, you begin to see that respecting yourself isn't about being perfect or making others happy. It's about honoring your own truth, even when it's hard. This understanding can slowly shift you from collapse to clarity, paving the way for the comprehension we'll explore next. Now, as we reach this point of understanding, something begins to shift inside you. It's not a sudden flash of light, but a slow, gentle realization that the way you've been feeling and acting makes perfect sense when you see it through the lens of your past. You start to connect the dots. The anxiety you feel around toxic people isn't a flaw in your character, but an echo from childhood, where standing up for yourself meant risking love or safety. For instance, if you grew up with a parent like Edward, who reacted with anger when you expressed disagreement, it's no wonder you hesitate to speak your truth now. Or if you had a caregiver like Francis, whose unpredictability taught you to always be on guard, it's understandable that you'd avoid conflict to feel secure. Freud's wisdom reminds us that our unconscious mind holds these patterns not to punish us, but to protect us based on what it learned long ago. This comprehension is powerful because it removes the layer of self-blame. You're not broken or weak, you're human, shaped by experiences that were often beyond your control. When you grasp this, you can start to see your reactions not as failures, but as intelligent adaptations that once helped you survive. This doesn't mean you're stuck with them forever. It means you now have the clarity to choose differently. You might think of someone like Rebecca, who after years of feeling guilty for not asserting herself, finally understands that her silence was a way to cope with early fears of abandonment. With this insight, she can begin to experiment with small acts of self-respect, like saying no to unreasonable demands, without the heavy weight of shame. Or consider William, who realized that his people-pleasing stemmed from a childhood where he had to earn affection through compliance. Now, he can acknowledge his needs as valid and start setting boundaries gently. This understanding brings a sense of relief and empowerment. It's like finding the missing piece of a puzzle. Suddenly, the chaos of your emotions starts to make order. You see that the toxic dynamics in your life aren't random. They're reflections of unresolved inner conflicts, and by addressing those, you can change how you show up in relationships. Freud often spoke about the importance of bringing the unconscious into consciousness, and that's exactly what's happening here. As you comprehend the roots of your behavior, you gain the ability to interrupt the automatic responses. Instead of reacting from fear, you can pause and ask yourself, is this really about now, or is it an old story playing out? This moment of awareness is where true change begins. It allows you to start treating yourself with the kindness and respect you've been seeking from others, knowing that your worth isn't something to be earned, it's inherent and always has been. This comprehension isn't about fixing everything overnight. It's about accepting where you are and moving forward with compassion, one small step at a time. Let's delve deeper into how this understanding unfolds in real life. Imagine a person like Karen who always felt she had to be perfect to be loved, perhaps because her father, Harold, was highly critical. For years, she blamed herself whenever things went wrong in relationships, thinking she wasn't good enough. But with this new awareness, she sees that her drive for perfection was a survival strategy from childhood, not a personal failing. She starts to forgive herself for past mistakes and recognizes that she deserves respect simply for being who she is. Or take the case of Mason, a man who avoided confrontation because his mother, Mary, would withdraw emotionally when he expressed anger. He carried that into adulthood, letting toxic colleagues like Brian walk all over him. Now, understanding that his avoidance was rooted in a fear of emotional abandonment, he can consciously decide to speak up in small ways, building his confidence over time. This process of comprehension often brings up mixed emotions. Relief mixed with sadness for the younger self who had to adapt in such ways. It's okay to feel that. It's part of healing. Freud's ideas help us see that by acknowledging these truths, we integrate split-off parts of ourselves, leading to greater wholeness. You might notice that as you understand your patterns, you become less reactive in toxic situations. For example, when someone like Sandra makes a critical comment, instead of immediately shrinking, you might feel that old fear, but choose to respond calmly, affirming your own perspective. This isn't about becoming confrontational, it's about holding your ground with self-assurance. Each time you do this, you reinforce a new narrative, that you are worthy of respect, regardless of others' opinions. This comprehension also helps you recognize when you're projecting old fears onto current situations, allowing you to disentangle past from present. Over time, this leads to healthier relationships as you attract people who respect your boundaries and value you for who you are. Remember, this isn't a linear process. There will be setbacks, but each moment of understanding builds resilience. By embracing this compassionate self-awareness, you're not just changing behaviors, you're transforming your relationship with yourself, paving the way for a life where self-respect becomes a natural, unwavering part of who you are. Now, I want to ask you something directly. After hearing all this, can you think of a moment in your own life when you felt that familiar pull to stay silent or please someone, even when it cost you a piece of yourself? What if, in that moment, you could pause and remember that your feelings are valid and that you have the right to respect yourself no matter what? Take a breath and consider this. How might your life start to change if you began to honor that inner voice just a little more each day? If this video made you reflect on your own patterns and inspired you to look deeper, I'd love for you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue these conversations and support each other in understanding the hidden parts of ourselves. Thank you for being here and for taking this step toward a more compassionate and self-respecting you. Let's expand on this reflection. Think about a specific situation. Maybe it was with a friend like Sandra, who always has a critical remark, or a family member like Edward, whose approval you've been seeking since childhood. In that moment, did you notice the tension in your body, the quickening of your pulse, the urge to agree even when you disagreed? That's your unconscious trying to protect you from old fears. But now, with this awareness, you can start to question it. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of here? Is it rejection, conflict, or the fear of not being enough? And then, gently remind yourself that those fears stem from past experiences, not your present reality. You are not that scared child anymore. You have the strength to choose differently. Perhaps you recall a time at work, like Robert did with his boss Donald, where you held back your ideas to avoid confrontation. Imagine if, next time, you took a small step, maybe just stating your opinion calmly, or setting a simple boundary like, "I need some time to think about that." Notice how it feels to prioritize your own voice. It might be uncomfortable at first, but each time you do it, you're rebuilding your self-respect from the inside out. This isn't about grand gestures. It's about those quiet, consistent choices that add up over time. Consider how Freud's ideas can guide you here. By bringing these unconscious patterns into your conscious mind, you're not erasing them, but you're gaining the power to respond rather than react. You might start a journal to track these moments. Write down when you felt disrespected and how you handled it. Over days or weeks, you'll see patterns emerge, and that awareness alone can be transformative. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you can see the obstacles clearly and navigate around them. And remember, this isn't a solo endeavor. Share these insights with someone you trust, or join communities where people are on similar paths. You're not alone in this. Many are learning to reclaim their worth, just like you. As you practice this, you'll likely notice shifts, less anxiety in social situations, more confidence in your decisions, and a deeper sense of peace because you're no longer betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. It's a gradual process, filled with ups and downs, but every step counts. So, I'll ask again, what's one small thing you can do today to honor your own needs and feelings? Maybe it's saying no to an extra task that drains you, or speaking up in a conversation where you'd normally stay quiet. Whatever it is, know that it's a brave act of self-love. And if this resonates with you, I encourage you to engage with this content. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories and reflections not only help you, but inspire others who are watching and feeling the same things. Together, we can create a space where understanding ourselves becomes a source of strength, not shame. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey toward a more authentic and self-respecting life.